Happy Monday and welcome to Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I am your host, Janice Carter Miller, and today is a beautiful day. We're getting ready to roll right on into fall. I made note last week, the first day I saw the leaves fall. That's one thing about moving back home that we've got all four seasons. Living in Las Vegas, it was like summer, a little spring, and then summer again, So it's really nice to see the beauty uh, of Louisville, Kentucky, and the Kentucky Valley region, especially when it comes into fall, the orange and the red. It's very pretty. It's very pretty. Some of the activities that went on this last week, last week there was the Give a Day program. That was a day that everyone was supposed to make a donation to your favorite charity. Um, Everybody was asking kind of at the same time, just to bring it to the forefront of everyone's recollection that you need to be philanthropic, even at a very small level, because Louisville is a very philanthropic kind of city. I watched all the things that happened when the Urban League was building the Sports and Learning Center, and how the city got behind that and made it happen, and actually ended up paying that building off in record time. So we're very philanthropic. Um, I also attended Senator Neal's 39th surprise birthday for the 39th time. And that was wonderful. We had a good time. It was good to see people out. It's great to see people out, but I'm going to tell you that COVID is not gone anywhere. She's playing hide and seek with us. So I think everyone needs to be proactive. If you're going somewhere and you're around a lot of people in close quarters, you may think about masking up. That's just my opinion, because I think for myself, I need to mask up. When I see a lot of people, it just brings it back to my remembrance, about the hugging and the kissing. And, we're Southern and we want to hug and we want to kiss everybody. I'm saying, oh, Lord, COVID is saying, I see you. So be careful. Just be careful. And I think now that the new booster is out for this new strain of COVID. So us senior citizens, I think it's about time y'all go check with your doctor and get your shot. Being proactive doesn't hurt a thing. It's just like that flu shot. And it makes you just feel just a little bit more secure about going in places that have a lot of people in close quarters. Well, I mentioned the Give a Day program to bring you back around to another very philanthropic type of program that you may not know about or have heard about or didn't know exactly what it was all about. And my guest today is Mr. Patrick Lewis with the Filson Historical Society. Afternoon, Patrick.
How are you? I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you said you'd come because you were so full of information on that tour. I said, we've got to share this information. And one of the questions that you presented to the group that was on the tour was, what did people think about what the Filson was,
hmm
and especially Black folks.
That's right.
You know, so how did you receive that? Did you have any idea that that's what they thought, or
Oh,
tell us
yes.
what they thought so
Well,
the
yeah,
audience
and
can?
and and we've heard that before. The Filson Historical Society. We're down in Old Louisville. We've only been calling ourselves a historical society for about 30 years now, since the early 90s. Before that, we were the Filson Club, and that
Okay.
was very intentional, right? It was a place that you had to be voted in, and so we've heard from not only Black Louisvillians, but Catholic Louisvillians, Jewish Louisvillians, that I didn't feel welcome there. I didn't feel like that was a place for me to come. And again, in the 90s, we changed our name to be the Historical Society, right? And now you don't have to be nominated by a member and voted in, right? Like anybody who wants to learn about the past can join, can come into research, can attend programs. But we also realized that even just saying that wasn't enough, right? Like we had to actively reach out and welcome people in and let them see themselves in the stories that we tell about Louisville, about Kentucky, about the Ohio Valley, right? Because everybody's history is important. And so that's what we've been working on, for the past, probably 5-7 years, is really intentionally thinking about who we are and how we're seen in the community, and trying to meet people and welcome them in, right? Because the more voices we have at the table, the richer the story that we can tell about ourselves.
So, Patrick, what was your interest in the Filson Society?
Well, I'm a professional historian, and since I went to college, and I'm a native Kentuckian, and knew that the Filson was the place to come if you wanted to do research, if you want to look at the original archival documents, the diaries, the letters, the business records, the photographs, the real one-of-a-kind stuff that's 150, 200 years old. The Filson is the place to go. There are other places across the state, other university libraries and things like that, but the Filson is sort of the largest concentration of it. So I was working for the State Historical Society in Frankfort for about 10 years and living in Lexington. And the Filson needed somebody to come work on their research and publications. And so I jumped at the chance. It was the destination for me.
Wow. And it seems like it's really, because you run the gambit of what you all do. We're going to talk about your programming a little later, and so we'll let the audience know about some of the upcoming events that you have.
Yeah.
But tell one of the things that was interesting to me that I mentioned was about, well, let me first say this. I was introduced to the Filson by my mother. Because we have family reunions every year. And two of my great uncles were in the Civil War.
Ooh, yes.
And my mother wanted to find out more information. Well, she wrote, I guess she joined, wrote a letter, and I have, since she's passed on, but I have the records, the letter that you all sent back. It has my two uncles' names. When they joined the service, when they mustered out, what division they were in, and when we went to D.C., the monument that Ed Hamilton did.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we went and we found their names, and I put my fingers under their names, and we took a picture of that. But I know that's where I saw that. I was saying the Filson Historical Society. I said, my mother was a little historian in her own rights as far as our family goes. But that was my introduction to the Filson. So you've got a section. I know you do memberships. We're going to talk about that. We're going to tell them how much it costs. Because I joined the Filson because I'm also a member of the Eliza Tevis Society.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
And I know that we're working with you all to bring some of that history to the Filson. So tell us about some of the different collections that you have there at the Filson.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So we've got a library and genealogy section, and for folks who are looking to do family history, that's one of the greatest places to start. And so that's got a bunch of family history books of sort of all the families that end up coming through Kentucky. We've got county history books of all the different counties in Kentucky, as well as books from neighboring states. Especially states where lots of Kentuckians ended up coming from, obviously, especially Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, those sorts of places. And so most folks will come start in there. We've also got, lots of microfilm of old county records. which are really, really helpful for getting down into the weeds on things, online databases like Ancestry.com and things like that you can come in and use. And more importantly, we've got staff, right? We've got somebody that's sitting there with you and can sort of help you guide that search and get that started, right? To help you figure out which books you need to be looking in, can sort of talk to you a little bit about your family. What are the names? Where do you know they came from, right? If you know some pieces but not all of it, they can kind of help you lay out a strategy.
Right.
Now then, if you want to go a little bit deeper, if you're interested in sort of getting your hands kind of on the real stuff, old stuff.
Okay.
Then
like wills and diaries and
letters and all that good kind of stuff. That really, the really old paper with the good handwriting. Then we've got a whole special collections department where we have over 2 million pages of original manuscript material. Some of that going back to the 1600s, 1700s, all the way up through the present, really.
Okay.
We're collecting the papers of folks who are, active in politics currently and in the community currently, right? Collecting that history right up to now, finding those people who are the history makers of the last couple of decades, and as they retire, and hopefully before they pass, get those papers in, and then help us sort of catalog those, make those accessible. So what we do is sort of take those materials from families who choose to donate them to us. We also have an acquisitions fund. So sometimes we'll go out and buy things if they're available at auction. We'll go out and buy collections of letters or diaries or things. And then catalog those. And that's really what is most important, because that helps you find it, right? So we talk, we create finding aids that list the counties that this is discussing, the topics that it's discussing, organize it by date or by sender or recipient or things like that. So you can really hone in on what you need. And that's open to anybody. Anybody can come in and look at anything we've got. But we also really make a point to get students in there, high school students, college students who are writing history projects, who are learning how to do Kentucky history. And then we work with professors and graduate students who are, writing the newest books about Kentucky history that are eventually going to get published, that are eventually going to come give lectures at our building, and eventually hopefully sort of go into school curriculum so that everybody's going to know.
Does JCPS do a lot of things with you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we work with the JCPS social studies curriculum folks. Ryan New is the head of that. They do some really fantastic things, especially in light of all the legislation that's come out of Frankfurt in the past 2 years, trying to restrict what our history teachers are able to teach about the past. Fortunately, Kentucky has a kind of a less severe version of those bills that got passed in other states like Florida. And the Filson spoke out against all of the bills that were on the table in Kentucky and published an open letter in the Courier Journal and sent it to the LRC. But I feel like, even with the legislation that got passed, there's still a lot that we can do to teach our students about the past. And particularly about those contentious issues about the past. But they're the things that students need to know about because they impact the world that they live in.
Right. It seems though, sometimes it sounds like it's not so, we know what we want to teach the kids, but then it seems like it's the adults that want to hold us back.
That's right.
And when I was seeing all this uproar about critical race theory, I'm saying, but it happened.
Yeah.
You cannot, it happened. So what are you're going to make it like it didn't happen?
Right.
So,
well, and the kids know, they live that reality, right? They see the legacies that 150 or 200 years of American history. They see it in their classrooms. They see it in their neighborhoods. They're not ignorant. They know that they need to understand these things, and they're going to find out, one way or the other. The internet has democratized access to information, and while that's been, done mostly good, it's done some harm too. But kids can find out, and so I think it's much better that we, help them and structure those conversations productively. And one of the things that I really love about where JCPS And most of contemporary education is getting students to read those primary sources, to read those letters, read those diaries, read the original words, and then they have to talk about amongst themselves, what this means, parsing information, learning how to deconstruct an argument, learning how to look for misinformation and lies, right? Because that isn't new.
Wow.
People have been obscuring what they really mean behind some flowery language for a long time.
A long time.
And so, equipping those students with those skills that they're going to need in the real world to understand the world that they encounter on social media and in their political discourse, well, they can do that in the past too. And we have those sources for Kentucky history. And so we're really working hard to create lesson plans for teachers at all levels, just to be able to drop these lessons right into their planning, and then to provide, especially in our after the pandemic, especially digital resources so that they can access those letters, diaries, business records, original photographs, you name it, from wherever they're at.
So when you say we need our kids to read more, so tell me, how do you think AI is going to affect the delivery of historic events? I'm not really real AI fan right now.
No. I've been really fascinated, listening to my friends who teach, especially in college campuses,
Okay.
As they've been trying in the past month to write syllabus that has to deal with, what does AI mean in terms of academic dishonesty and plagiarism? Is that fair game? I think the most creative people and lessons that I've seen have been sort of getting the students to pick apart what the AI spits out.
Okay.
And so the assignment is, you ask the AI, hey, tell me about what the Declaration of Independence says. And then the AI will spit out whatever it spits out.
Right.
Some of that's going to be useful and some of that's going to be garbage. But then the students have to have that exercise of fact checking that.
Right.
And bringing in their own perspective and challenging those ideas with the primary sources. Well, Thomas Jefferson said this in the Declaration of Independence, and we know this about Thomas Jefferson. So maybe what this AI claim is doing. So I think you can spin it into something that is pretty productive. But you got to work at it, and you got to stay ahead of wherever technology's leading us.
Yeah, because we're there.
Yeah.
It's a fast moving train.
Well, and I think what's really fascinating too is, so we talk about creating these finding aids, that describe what's in a collection, right? So we get the whatever family papers from Jefferson County, Kentucky, from 1843 to 1879. And so we'll write up a little description that tells you about the family. It tells you about their activity. They owned a store, they owned a farm, they enslaved this number of people. There are Civil War letters, there are business records. And all of that finding aid is searchable by the AI bots behind Google. So that, and we like that, we want somebody who's asking Google, hey, tell me about the history of slavery in Louisville, Kentucky. I want them to be able to find that collection.
Right.
But now then we run into those other challenges to where, look, the AI machine isn't reading 19th century handwriting. And unfortunately, students aren't reading.
Teaching our kids how to write.
Yeah, they can't read it. So there's some additional access barriers. We're coming up with some neat ways to try and get around that and use the power of crowdsourcing and especially, God bless retired folks who can still read that stuff and want to volunteer their time. And we got an army of keyboard folks transcribing our materials and one, to make them searchable, but then just to be accessible in the classroom. It's there's some real barriers to getting able to access the past. But man, if you can connect students in with the real words of somebody who lived in their same county, and that they can connect to some way,
right?
That's it. That's
priceless. I have our family Bible. that my great grandfather gave my great grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And there are little letters, not like Mr., but like an L.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's, I don't know if it's like an English
Yeah.
from England type of
Mm-hmm.
script
Mm-hmm.
that means something else in front of some of the names in the Bible. Have you ever seen anything like that? I was just curious.
Oh, I'd love to see that. No, people make little notes about all kinds of stuff like that. We spent a long time before I came to the Filson working on a Civil War project and trying to understand all of the notes that these government bureaucrats in Frankfurt left on documents, and
Right.
we could decipher some of them, and some of them are just lost. But that'd be interesting, to kind of look at who gets those notes made on them. Do they live a long time? Do they have children? Do they not? Is there some sort of regularity to be able to figure out who gets those notes and who doesn't?
Right. Well, this was on the list of names
Mhm.
under all the births. There's a page for all the births,
Mhm.
and it's got these little strange. I said, "Well, what does that mean?"
That's really fascinating.
Just like it took me a minute to get circa.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying, well, I watched enough Jeopardy. I got circa, so I'm all right now. So tell me something, Patrick. If a person wants to become a member of the Filson, tell me how that works.
Well, you can go onto our website and you can sign up for a membership. We've got all kinds of different levels.
I hit the wrong thing. I was trying to get over here and make a banner for you. Put the website up.
So we got all kinds of different levels of membership for everybody. So we start off our basic membership for an individual is $75 a year. That gets you free admission to most of our lectures and events that we hold. You can come in anytime you want and come do research in the library, and you get some other things like our publications, our journal, our news magazine as well. We've got family members, so if you want to step up a little bit and have multiple members of the same household get all that stuff, that's at $125 a year. But we also have student and teacher rates at $30 a year that get you those same research privileges, those same ability to come to events as well. So that I think is really important. We also have some special scholarship funds specifically for students if they don't want to become members, but they just need to come in and do some research. We have, fortunately, a couple of decades ago, a donor left us a scholarship fund just for students to be able to come in and do their research. That's high school students, that's college students, that's anybody. So anybody who's working on a history project, feel free to come down to the Filson. We can get you in here and let you learn. And then we've also joined a federal program called Museums for All that provides free membership. The federal program is anybody who receives WIC benefits. We have also extended that to anybody whose economic circumstances don't allow them to pay our normal membership fees. We want everybody to be able to attend. And you can we've got on our website, you can just call us and we can get that set up for anybody.
Okay, so your website is www.filsonhistorical.org.
FilsonHistorical.org. That's right.
.org. Okay, I'm going to put this on the screen so people can see it. And there we go.
Thank you.
Look, I'm the producer, the director, the videographer, the light girl.
Do it all. No, and that's really fun. Membership, I think, is again, for whatever level you can afford, we want people to be able to come in and access the past. Non-members can attend any of our events that we hold. So we do usually lectures, book talks, conversations about the latest things that are going on in Kentucky and U.S. history, 1 or 2 times a week. And oftentimes those are down at our facility in Old Louisville on 3rd Street. But we also go out into the community. So coming up over the course of the next few weeks, we're doing a 3-part series about the history of Portland. So each year we choose a different neighborhood in Louisville, and we do a sort of a multi-part series about the past, the present, and the future of that neighborhood. So this year we're focusing on Portland. So we're hosting, we're not hosting, Ed White and Danny Syme are hosting a walking tour around Portland
Okay.
later on this week. And
This
then
week?
this week, this Thursday, it's during the day, 9 to 1.
Thursday, 9 to 1?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And normally, what are your hours? What hours are you open?
So down at the Filson, at our building, normally research hours are 9 to 4:30, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
And then events, lectures and things like that are usually at 6 o'clock, usually on Tuesday and Thursday evenings.
Okay. I can put some of this up on my
Yeah.
I just got my website finished, so I can put some stuff up on it.
Appreciate it.
And so what was the other part I wanted to go to? You know, and another way that I got more involved with the Filson this year was I interviewed Philip Bond.
Oh, Phil's the best.
We were talking all things basketball because I am a co-founder of the Dirt Bowl.
Oh, yes.
And so Philip was telling me about him being at United Way, and then he was saying, but I'm also on the board at the Filson Society, Jennison. And I started talking about it, and he saw that I was interested.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when he hooked me up, and I started receiving emails. So I had to start getting involved, and I had to start.
I'm so glad he did.
Your events, which I'm really glad about, because I like to be knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
And having this show, I've learned from some people that I did not know, like you, but after having an interaction with you while we were on the tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to talk about what that was about.
Yes, absolutely.
It's important to me to keep growing, to keep learning,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and finding out about all the different elements of what you do. Because I can send people to you. I can tell them, you know, well, have you ever tried, if you're doing some research, have you ever tried going to the Filson? Have you called to see how they can help you? Because aside from Eliza, there was someone else that was doing a project. I can't think of what it is now. But the fact that when Queen Elma Lucille,
Mm-hmm.
She's the queen.
That's right.
When she reached out, she and Greg, they sent me an email to join that initiative that you all wanted to start some Black programming there at the Filson. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad that they did reach out. You know, and we've been doing a number of tours with folks from the Black community around Louisville just to try and let folks know what we're doing. So this summer we officially launched something that's been in the works for a couple of years now. We've been having kind of quiet conversations with Phil and other folks to launch an African American history initiative. And you know, this came out of years of planning that we've been doing. And, you know, we thought that we wanted to take our time in doing it right, and building up a really, you know, sizable endowment for this initiative so that it's perpetual, right? So that we can make this commitment to the Black community in Louisville that, you know, this is not just a phase for the Filson, right? That this is a forever commitment of staff and time and space and resources to really make Black history a perpetual part of what we do. And that's not to say that we haven't been collecting really important materials on local Black history, or haven't been sharing those and publishing those. You know, I think we've got a really amazing track record. You know, Blaine Hudson was on the board for about a decade in the 90s and published all kinds of really exceptional articles and started bringing in those collections. Ken Clay, talking about, you know, documenting, you know, Louisville's jazz and music history, has brought us in some absolutely incredible materials. But we really wanted to be able to expand that.
Okay.
So the goal for our African American History Initiative is to raise about $3.5 million. Of that, we've gotten about 2.25 has been
Wow.
raised already. So we're well on our way, and we are hiring right now a full-time curator of African American collections. In fact, those interviews start tomorrow morning. I'm really excited about
Wow.
that. And
Okay.
so we'll have
That's great.
somebody on board by January 1st of next year, who can be, that resource person that's going out of the community and sort of meeting those community needs, right? Whether that's somebody to preserve a collection of important papers, to work on a community project, to help start an important conversation, whatever that looks like. It's going to be very open-ended. So then after that person gets on next year, we're going to be hiring some support positions, some interns, to really be able to sort of process those materials and make sure that they're ready for research. So that's the big, really exciting work that we've got going on. And I think it's really exciting because we started a very similar project with the Jewish community about 6 or 7 years ago. We've had that curator on board now. Her name's Abby Glogauer, for about 5 years, and the type of energy and sustained activity that we've been able to have with the Jewish community through programs, lectures, community events, tours, exhibits, collections, all of it is absolutely, it just gives me life. It is what we do best, and I'm really excited now to see where that African American community relationship is going to head. I think it's going to be incredible.
I'm excited about that. I think I see great potential there. Because Louisville's the history, especially of Black Americans in Louisville, really kind of runs through education.
Yes.
That all of these, if you look at some of the schools, the Phyllis Wheatley, and you look at some of the educators, Lyman T. Johnson, and I can't even begin to say all these different names. But I remember I used to live on Chestnut Street, and Chestnut Street was very historic that's where a lot of doctors and educators lived.
Beautiful houses.
Yeah, back in the day. But these are, the Filson is a place that we need to know where you are and what you do. And they feel like I can go and find out.
That's
and if
right.
I have a question, someone will answer this question for me.
Yes.
Because that's how we learn and grow. And that's why you all are there.
Well, and I think that's so important to get back to that learn and grow point. And it touches on something that you said earlier about never stopping that growth and that exploration and that curiosity. Right. We're getting ready to celebrate our 140th anniversary next year. 140? Yeah, 1884. Wow. And so we've been thinking a lot about what does this mean for us? How can we have this long history but still remain a relevant organization, and who, as our membership has thankfully become more diverse and more representative of the city that we call home and the communities that we are a part of, how do we describe a Filson member, right? Okay. If you go back to that 140 years ago, you can describe a Filson member very narrowly, right?
Right.
They're a wealthy white Protestant lawyers. That's
right.
who they are. But now, again,
can't say that.
You can't say that anymore, and that's fantastic, right? But what unites all of those Filson members together? And we've had a series of conversations with some facilitators and staff and board members and community folks, and what's that common thread? And the common thread is curiosity. Is wanting to dive deep and understand, and not being satisfied with a surface level understanding of our community, of our past, and wanting to come back again and again and again and go to lectures and do their own research and come to exhibits and meet other people who are also deeply committed to doing the work and finding out and understanding at a deep level. And that it's that level of curiosity and passion that unites everybody in the Filson.
Because it's something to know where you're from and the rich history.
Yeah.
We've got good and bad history.
Yeah.
We've got black and white history. We've got Protestant and Jews and blacks history. But it's all encapsulated at the Filson. Yeah. Everybody's history is there. And so if there's something that you want to know, that's a place you can go.
Yeah.
I'm really interested, like I mentioned to you, that since doing this podcast, when you said about collections, if you know anyone that has a collection that they want to, share with the Filson, and I'm sitting there saying, oh, well, I wonder if I could just submit my podcast, because this is a part of my legacy. I'm not just the jazz singer,
That's yes.
And that's another part of my history.
Yes.
If somebody said Janice Carter's from Louisville, Kentucky, got any more history on her? And somebody says, yeah, check out the Filson. They've got a whole collection on everything she's done.
Well, and I think that's so important. And I'm so glad to hear you express that, right? Because one of the things that we struggle with now is getting people to see the historical relevance of their own lives, of their families' lives and stories.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, oh, we weren't important. We didn't do anything. I never was elected to anything, or I never ran a business or things like that. But, everybody's got a perspective. And we try to think now, I'm a 19th century historian, right? So I study the Civil War and Reconstruction and Emancipation. So I think about all the things that I wish I had, right? The types of sources that I want to have to write the books I want to write, but they don't exist. And then, how can I find that kind of material today and make sure that we collect that and preserve that before it gets lost, right? And we're seeing this, constantly. Our curators go out, once a week at least, each one of them, to go out and meet with somebody who's, downsizing, or a parent or a grandparent has just passed. And, we might be the last chance to preserve this really unique story. And sometimes that story is told through photographs, and sometimes that story is told through clothes or quilts or military uniforms. And sometimes that's through letters or anything. Everybody's got something though.
Yep. You know what it makes me think of when you look at, I've been a big Yellowstone fan, right? And you look at how they took that and all the different generations of the family. And that's kind of how individuals can look at their own families. Some people, we ended up in Kentucky, but we started out in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Fascinating. Yeah.
The one thing that I came to one of the programs that you had were the Rosenwald schools. And before my mother passed, she said her great-grandfather worked on Rosenwald schools.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I go to DC to the African American History Museum, I see the picture of Rosenwald schools. So I take a picture in front of it because this is something that my mother told me. And then when I see Philip and I had just connected, and then they sent me something, they were sending me stuff, and I was teaching a class or something. And I couldn't come on the days, but this one time I was finished with my class and I could come. Good. And I met the curator for the Rosenwald exhibit. And because that was, I didn't know how important those schools were. And most of them are in the deep South.
Yes.
Right? But Kentucky had some.
Oh, yes. Hundreds of them. Yes, absolutely. Okay. That was such a powerful exhibit. And I'm so glad to hear you bring it up. And I'm glad you got to meet Andrew, the curator. That came about, God bless, in some ways, the pandemic and Zoom and everything. We were doing a lecture just like this. He had just published his book. He's a contemporary photographer. based in Atlanta, and he'd gone around and shot photos of all these, these schoolhouses that, most of them were in bad shape now because they've been neglected for half a century, but all across the South. And he published this book, and he had this traveling exhibit to go with the book. And after we finished that, one of our members reached out to us and said, "That was fantastic. Y'all should get the exhibit. That should come to Louisville. We need to see that here." And so that individual and a couple other people, helped us put up the money to get that exhibit here. And it was in our gallery almost all summer. Had a number of really just incredible programs with him. He came up from Atlanta. He brought up a couple of the men that he photographed in the book who had been students at a Rosenwald school where their father had been the principal. And then both of them went to college and went into education. And so they both came up and talked. And then one of their wives had gotten into historic preservation to preserve the building just outside of Nashville. And we're able to take a tour of the existing Rosenwald schools here in Jefferson County.
So there are still some in Jefferson County.
There are, yeah. We went to 3 here, one in J-Town, one in Eastwood, and one almost into Oldham County, right out towards Prospect.
Where's Eastwood?
It is out Old Shelbyville Road, almost to the Shelby County line.
Okay. So that's kind of going out by the old Lincoln Institute, huh?
Yes, absolutely. It's headed out that way, and that piece of land is deeply connected in with Louisville Black history. That is P.O. Sweeney's land, and Maurice Sweeney, of course, is still an active presence out that way in terms of real estate. And so that community, that Eastwood school, is where the Sweeney family were educated, and then they, of course, went in and established a neighborhood. So that is a deeply historic piece.
My mother was a Lincolnite. My mother went to Lincoln when she came from Mississippi. She thought she was going to go to Central High School, but her brother had enrolled her in Lincoln Institute.
Wow, that's incredible.
And one of the things when she turned 90, I have to share this because it made, I had goosebumps and I was just in tears. I said, I haven't seen any pictures of my mother in high school. So I did the yearbook search, and I found a picture of my mother's freshman year at Lincoln Institute, and it said, "Class officers, E. Monroe, president." I said, my mother didn't know anybody. How did she get to be president? It was like, wow. I mean, it's things like that you can find out about your family, your heritage, your lineage, what's all up in your DNA. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, I mean, I still have that picture where I just literally, I had to look on this picture and find her, and she's at the top. But because she was very fair skinned, I said, that's my mama right there. Absolutely. So it was wonderful just to be able to see that. But history is, I've gotten more involved in the aspects of my own family with the Eliza Tevis. I'm kind of like the spokesperson for them. When we get everything together and we get our exhibit together, because we're working on that.
That's right.
We'll be there to see you. You know that somebody, I don't know exactly who's working with Nat Green and my
Jenny,
cousin Edna and cousin Sherelle.
Our reference librarian. Yes, absolutely. She's in deep with all the Eliza Tevis records.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me today.
This has been so enjoyable.
Well, good. I told you, it's just an easy conversation that you just kind of tell us about what's going on over there at the Filson, because we just need to know.
I'll ramble about that anytime.
I'll let Phil know. I'll send him a clip so he can come back, and if he's not watching, I hope he's watching. I had people made some comments, and I hit the wrong button earlier, but we'll see. But I thank you so much for coming on. If you told me about a couple of things coming up in the next few weeks, some programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got that Portland series that's happening. So again, that tour, and then
The Portland tour is on this Thursday, right?
this Thursday. That's right. And then we've got a panel discussion out at Good Shepherd Church there in Portland on October 2nd as well. It's going to be talking about the sort of the future facing and what can Portland do and sort of that community building aspect.
Okay.
We've got a new exhibit opening this Friday. So we've got a reception down at the Filson. So if anybody wants to come and browse through it, it's going to be called Animals in the Archives. It's kind of a lighthearted look at people's pets and historic pet photography. And so everybody who cares about dogs and cats and horses and birds and everything else, come down and take a look at that. And then you can also see our main permanent exhibit called People Passage Place that we walked folks through on that tour that you were at. Of course, Miss Elmer Lucille Allen has her own corner of the wall with a bunch of her her work, her art, her sculpture, her some photographs and original material from her. She's one of our great collections donors. All those photographs that she takes everywhere, and she's always got her camera on her.
When you walk up, I walked up on her at the birthday party, and the first thing was, Stacy, just take this picture.
That's right.
It's like the first thing you have. Don't hug me, don't kiss me. She's like, stand still so I can take your picture.
and just fair warning to everybody who's around her. All of those photos come to the Filson. So if you're around her, you're going to be part of history.
Hey, there we go.
It really is, in the same way as these interviews, that you've been assembling, right? This sort of who's who, these conversations that are important to Louisville, right? Think about all the events that she attends, all the art openings, all the community events, the social events and activities. What better record of what's happening in Louisville right now are we going to have in 100 years? That's going to be just absolutely.
Keep up with Elma Lucille's agenda. Her playbook is
open. Me out.
I'm saying she's everywhere.
That's right.
It's a joy to watch her. I went to her birthday party, but it's a joy because now she was in the same generation as my mother, and she's such a warm-hearted woman. It's like, this is what we come from. This is Elma Lucille is a prime example of who we are.
Yeah.
Especially in the Black community, we can look to her and say, because a lot of Louisvillians have done a lot of great things. I used to tell people years ago, I said, I'm from the city where we've got Muhammad Ali, the Kentucky Derby, and me.
That's it. Trifecta.
So that was my little spiel, how I got to be a part of Louisville history. But thank you so much, Patrick. We'll stay in touch. You'll see me soon.
Absolutely.
And I'll probably be down there coming up soon with Eliza Tevis Society, little group, working things out with you all.
That's right. We got some.
If you ever want to come back on, you've got something that you want to share with our audience, please feel free.
I tell you what, I will take you up on that once we get that new curator hired. Would love to get them on here and have them talk with you and introduce them.
So we can meet the new curator. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. Well, it's dinner time, Patrick. Bon appetit, darling.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you so much. All right, now, the Filson Society. You have to go see for yourself. As things as life would have it, everything evolves. What it was then, it ain't now. It's even better. Go check it out. You can check out genealogy. They've got all different kind of programmings. I think they even do jazz 2 or 3 times a year with Ken Clay. I see Patrick shaking his head. They do jazz 2 or 3 times a year with Ken Clay. And you love to go to jazz with Ken Clay because, I think Dick Sisto is usually a part of that as well. But it's just it's a safe place to go. We're always looking for safe places to go and places to go where we can learn something. And history is a wonderful thing. to know more about. As you get older, you want to know more. I mean, when I just found out that one of the last things that my mom told me was about my grandfather working on the Rosenwald schools, but then Sherry Bryant, when the curator was talking, that these collections are being housed, because I wanted to see if I could find my grandfather's name as an employee. So those files are at Fisk. So I told Sherry Bryant next time she goes to Fisk, I'm going so I can go down there in middle, see if I can't find my granddaddy's name. How about that? I hope you enjoyed the conversation. This will play again on Friday at 7 p.m. I call it an encore. So it'll run again on Friday. Until then, have a fantastic evening. Bon appetit. It's dinner time. See you next week.